Hello, everybody. Good morning, I should say. Welcome to All Things Aviation, presentation of the Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation. You know, I've been in the industry for a long time, and I've talked with a number of young people of all ages, whether they're a middle schooler, like I know one young man who's aspiring to be an aerospace engineer that's watching this morning, all the way through high school and college and post-college. And there's a common denominator that continues to come up, and that is about what the opportunities are in aviation. And it goes beyond being a pilot. Of course, being a pilot is number one. It's number one with me. It's usually the common thought process initially when people are thinking about aviation. They think about flying an airplane and becoming a pilot. But along the same lines, there are so many, it's such a vast industry that a lot of people don't realize all of the other opportunities that take place. So one of the goals with this program is to expand that envelope and let people know some of the opportunities that are available for them in the industry, whether you're somebody that is aspiring to get in the industry, whether you're already started, maybe you're at an aviation university, or you've already actually started working in the industry, and you just want to know what your options are and what the possibilities are as you grow your career. So that's what we're going to accomplish today. So we have an interesting set of guests. We have three, I call them young aviation professionals, and they two of them just finished school at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. And are now going in the next phase of starting or beginning their career. And I didn't turn off my phone. And then there are, we have three, what I call heavyweights in the industry. They're my age. They are somewhere in the vicinity. They may argue that. But anyhow, they've been around a long time in the industry. One is a professional pilot. The other has come up in the maintenance world, and the third has come up in the technology world. You know, so they're going to share their perspectives, but they're also going to try to answer some questions from these young aviation professionals as to what opportunities exist, as I mentioned before. So the three young aviation professionals are Bob Hoover Presidential Scholarship recipients, which was provided by the Citation Jet Pilots Association for these particular three. The scholarships are provided both by the Citation Jet Pilot Association as well as the Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation. So far, over $600,000 in scholarships has been given out to 34 recipients. So it's a growing program, and one we want to continue to expand and give more opportunities to aspiring aviators. The Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation, the president and board member is Tracy Forrest. Tracy's probably watching this morning, but he had a full schedule, so he wasn't able to actually join us. And also Michael Herman is the chairman of the board. Tracy and Michael both go back quite a ways with regard to knowing Bob Hoover, being friends with him, and being involved in some of the things. And you know, their push and desire with this foundation, with the Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation, is to do what Bob has always wanted to do, and that is encourage and inspire the next generation of aviators and those in aviation leadership to be our next leaders and be on the forefront of things. And so that's what we're doing, and this program is one way to expand that universe and make things happen. As I mentioned earlier, so with us, you see their names probably up on the screen. JJ Greenway, he's Jonathan Greenway, but everybody knows him as JJ. I don't believe anyone has ever called him Jonathan except maybe his parents. He's a longtime professional pilot and flight instructor. Actually, I knew he was a flight instructor because he was my instructor for checkouts, but I had no idea that he's coming up on 40 years. So that's quite a career just on that aspect of things with his flying, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him later. But he's what I call the overall aviation professional. James Person, James is a Navy guy like me. He had a little bit more fun because he got to fly. I unfortunately did not because of my glasses, but James is with Viasat. And so he's what I would say, you know, we talk about all things aviation, he's all things technology. And third, and definitely last but not least, Jim Suela. Jim is the co-founder of Westar Aviation. And Westar Aviation is a Midwest MRO maintenance company that's grown from humble beginnings to quite the operation these days in multiple locations. And if it has to do with maintenance or interior or any of those type of things for aircraft on just about any aircraft, Westar Aviation generally can handle it. So it's great to have Jim here. He has worked his way up from what I say turning wrenches on aircraft to, as I said, co-founder of what's considered a premier MRO here in the U.S. and probably the world for that matter. So we're really glad to have you guys here, and we hope that everybody likes what we discuss. And I hope that you young aviation professionals take advantage of this opportunity, this unique opportunity to talk directly with these guys. I'm going to start out by introducing, telling you a little bit more about JJ Greenway. JJ learned to fly at Boeing Field in Seattle in his teens, going back in the 70s. I told you he and I were in the same age group. After a stint flying a corporate turboprop in the South Pacific, he'll have to tell us, I'm sure he's got some stories about that. He flew with American Airlines for nearly 2 decades. With American, he flew the 727, the 757, the 767, as well as the MD-80. He took an early out after 9/11, stepped away from flying for a bit, and trust me, that was short-lived because you know, once the aviation bug bites you, it's hard to leave it. But he pursued aviation-related work at AOPA. That's where we met. There, JJ was the director of safety, and he was the chief flight instructor. Again, he did all of my checkouts and actually started my instrument flight training. After a short time serving as president of AMCO Insurance, he got the itch to get back in the cockpit full time. So about 6 years ago, he began flying corporate jets, and that's what he's been doing ever since. He's flown for corporate flight department. He's currently, he's a contract pilot, and he flies and is typed in Dassault Falcon jets, Cessna Citations. He has logged over 16,200 hours. He holds a flight engineer turbojet certificate. He's type rated in the 7.5, the 7.6, and the DC-9. He's also type rated in the Citation, the 560XL, the Dassault 2000 Easy, the Falcon 7X, and the Falcon 900 Easy. And when he's not flying for hire, he's probably hanging out in his hangar or pulling out his American Champion decathlon and doing some upside down flying. So welcome, JJ.
Thank you, Vince.
And starting with one of our young aviation professionals, Anna Robinson. So Anna is a ERAU graduate, or she likes to call it Riddle. And we could call her a young aviation professional, kind of a seasoned veteran of one, because she graduated in 2017, and she now flies for SkyWest Airlines. She's been doing that for the last 2.5 years. She flies she's flown their entire fleet, or flies their entire fleet of CRJs. And Anna's really thankful for not only the scholarship assistance, but she's thankful to the Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation and the Citation Jet Pilots Association for providing her with her first experience of attending an EAA AirVenture at Oshkosh. Speaking of which, we're really all missing that right about now. So she had a great time with that and appreciated that opportunity, and it just opened her eyes in terms of aviation. So welcome, Anna.
Thank you.
You know, JJ, you have had just a wealth of experience with your flying and so many different types of aircraft and so many different situations and that type of thing. Out of the box, what are some of the things that you would suggest or talk to Anna about as she starts in the early stage of her airline flying career?
Well, right now we're seeing this more than ever, but this business is very, very cyclical. And as you're starting out, we're in a time of all doom and gloom right now. And the advice you might get from others might be it's a lousy career to be in. But it's not. It comes and goes. When I started learning to fly in the mid 70s, we were just recovering from the oil embargo. People were still on furlough. Airlines weren't hiring, and it was a dim time to start. But and as a 15-year-old kid, that's all I could see was the doom and gloom. But sticking with it for 3 decades plus after that, there's been some incredible booms, some incredible busts too. But if you're positioned, you have your licenses and ratings, and you're ready to go, you can just as easily get in on the leading edge of the wave. I know there's a lot of people that have been furloughed, but some of us made it through our entire careers without being furloughed. And so if you like to fly, you have to do it.
Great. Anna, does anything come to mind to you that you would want to ask a guy like JJ with his experience in terms of what you're doing right now? And can you give us an idea of what it's like for you to go from a graduate of Embry-Riddle to be sitting right seat and carrying passengers?
Well, like JJ said, it's a very cyclical process, and it was phenomenal to go from flying Cessnas to flying jets right away. I was very lucky with the timing when I came into the industry, and when most of my coworkers came into the industry, it was all uphill. And right now we're seeing the first of my experience of a low, if you will, in the industry, and the boom that we were having before has kind of tapered off. And that's really my first this is really my first experience with the low side of it. It's all been uphill, and everything's on track, and everything's going the way it is and the way it needs to be and working out. And I've been very lucky so far, and I'm not in a bad position. I'm very lucky to be where I am, sitting first officer with an airline that I'm very happy with. But what I wanted to talk to JJ about mostly was how you've kept your flight instructor certificates and currency throughout your airline career as well. And I really loved flight instructing when I did it, but I haven't done it since I've come to the airlines. So I was wondering, how do you balance that and keep up with all of the changes in the flight instructor world and with the airlines?
Well, I had the fortunate experience actually of being a flight instructor with the airlines. I was a check airman on the 757 and 767.
Oh, very cool.
And that seemed to dovetail very well with my primary flight instruction I was giving on the side in small airplanes. It's not always easy. Obviously, the time you put into it as a flight instructor in the early days of my airline career, when I worked 15, 16, 17 days a month, it was tough to devote a couple extra hours to flying. But fortunately, I've always lived near the airport, and it's not that I can get out there for a couple hour lesson and get back home. But instructing with the airlines was really fun to be instructing in a 400,000 pound airplane one day, and then back in a 1,500 pound J3 Cub the next day.
Yeah, that's quite a transition.
It's been fun.
Very cool. Thank you.
Brandon or Brooke, do you guys have any questions for JJ regarding flying?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it is definitely astounding how long you have been in aviation and you've been able to keep all these certificates. And you're really one of the pictures for the aviation success story as somebody who has found their way through aviation, through its ups and its downs, and continued flying. And that's something that all pilots, including myself, absolutely would love. In your opinion, since, you know, and even with the other panelists as well, we have decades of experience here in aviation. For young professionals like myself and Brandon, I know we find ourselves in kind of an interesting position because we're finished with our schooling, but we're not able to get jobs yet. But what would you recommend for us to kind of position ourselves to be basically ready and in a better position when things start to get better and things start to tick up? Any specific examples of, you know, just anything that we could do to set ourselves apart from other pilots?
Well, I think you've embarked on a great track going through Riddle. I occasionally still take online classes from Riddle just to branch out and get different aviation experiences. But I know when I came to AOPA and met Vince, I was introduced to a whole world of aviation that was completely non-flying. And it was interesting talking to some of the hiring managers out at Jepson out in Colorado. They said, oh yeah, every time there's an airline furlough, we get pilots coming in wanting a job, thinking that they're qualified for a job, but all they're qualified for is a cockpit job. And aviation business is, and James and Jim can back this up for me, aviation business really is more than just the cockpit. And that was an eye-opener for me once I got out of the cockpit and stayed in aviation jobs. Just realizing that there's so many other things: aviation law, accident investigation, maintenance, and all these other things that we can't move the airplane until we have several other departments that are doing their job too. So the background you've gotten at Riddle is or any other aviation college, university, is very helpful. And in a time of downturn, I'm sure you'll find yourself using it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
The other thing too is contacts are so important.
Networking.
I have run across people in the last year that I hadn't seen since 35 years ago in Singapore or Guam. And it's a small world, and your contacts can help you out quite a bit down the line sometime.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely trying to use that network, and Embry-Riddle's really good about that. They have their alumni networks. I personally have just made a LinkedIn for the first time, so I'm trying to explore connecting with people that way as well, kind of bringing it into 2020. But thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
I actually got one of my jobs, or two of my contract jobs, off Facebook. So,
oh, wow.
So every contact counts.
Awesome.
That's great. Brandon, did you have something you wanted to ask JJ about?
Yes, sir. Maybe something more simple is for those of us that are trying to be airline pilots and figuring out what the life of a pilot's like. I understand you're on or off of work for you're flying for 3 or 4 days and then you're off for 3 or 4 days. What did you find that you'd like to do on the 3 or 4 days off? Did you pursue a second career? Did you try to do 2 careers at one time? Did you just fly all the other planes and do CFI? Did you relax at home?
Well, on the 3 or 4 days off when I was flying international to Europe and deep South America, tell you the truth, I caught up on sleep. But mostly early on in my career, when I didn't have as much control over my schedule, I did CFI work on the side. I had 2 young kids, and that's a full-time job as well.
It's exciting to think about being able to be a pilot for half the week and then do a completely different career the other half of the week. But maybe you're right. Maybe you got to use a few of those days to catch up on the time zone changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and introduce another guest that we have with us today, James Person. James is the Senior Director of Global Business Development and Business and VVIP Aviation at Viasat, located in Carlsbad, California, just north of San Diego. He's out in a wonderful area down there. James joined Viasat in 2013. My stuff likes to always pick on me when I'm in the middle of something. He joined Viasat in 2013, where he leads sales and business. He leads sales and business development for, again, business and VVIP aviation segments. He's been, it's an area that Viasat has been active in for more than 15 years. Prior to Viasat, James held general management, sales, product management roles in high technology, wireless, and satellite communications company. He began his career as a U.S. naval officer, go Navy, where he deployed twice on a destroyer during combat operations in the Middle East. And this is the part where I get a little jealous. He also got to fly an A-4 attacked aircraft once, and has experienced a couple of catapult takeoffs and arrested carrier landings as a passenger. I haven't even done that as a passenger. I'd love to do that. James has his BSEE degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, as well as an MBA in international marketing from USC, University of Southern California. So welcome,
Right on.
James.
Thanks, Vince. Great to be here with you and everybody else.
Thank you. And I also introduced another one of our young aviation professionals who you actually just heard her ask a question or two with JJ. Brooke Harrington. Brooke just graduated, as we said earlier, from Embry-Riddle with a degree in aeronautical science. She has her commercial multi-engine rating and is now working on her MBA via the ERAU Worldwide University. She is finishing with getting her Certified Flight Instructor Certificate, CFI, so that she can begin flight instructing at ERAU at Embry-Riddle. So welcome, Brooke.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Vince.
Absolutely. So I'm going to open this up a little bit as we move along here. And the whole goal, again, is to let you guys know of opportunities. I think, James, you come from a very unique perspective. I mean, you have an aviation background, but the technology, which is huge, I'm sure JJ can attest to that, as well as Jim. The technology is a big deal. The connectivity, in-flight connectivity, as you guys describe it, onboard entertainment, and all of those things are possible with the type of technology that we have now. But the other parts that we don't always think about, and it's important for pilots, is the flight operations technology, the ability to send information about the aircraft back down to the ground and vice versa. And then for commercial flying, the people's ability to watch movies or purchase products and things of that nature. You guys do it all. You have I'm going to go real MIT here for a minute, the KV band, the KA band, and the dual band. So can you give us the elevator perspective on that and some of the things that you do at Viasat, James?
Oh, you bet. So like you and JJ were talking about, there are a lot of careers in the aviation industry that aren't in the cockpit. And, you know, you mentioned I got to fly. I didn't get to fly as a career in the Navy for similar reasons to you, Vince, that my eyesight wouldn't let me do that. But it was fun that when I was on a destroyer, even as my primary job was gunnery officer, I had a collateral duty as the helicopter control officer. So we had a helicopter detachment on board, and I was the guy in the tower guiding them in the middle of the night, you know, rocking and rolling, and that was a lot of fun. But more specifically on my career now, I took my engineering degree and have been able to combine aerospace, because my company designs and builds satellites that we put up into space, but we also design avionics that go on aircraft. And our industries, we serve the government and military aircraft, we serve commercial airlines, but we're also very active in the segment that I love the most, and that's business aviation. So as you point out, I'm able to leverage my love of aviation and my engineering and business degrees to do something in an industry that's really great. I mean, business aviation is a relatively small industry, but it's great because everyone seems to know each other, and it's very global in nature, right? So our customers are based anywhere in the world, and as you've heard from JJ and you heard from others, fly everywhere in the world. And so we have people stationed around the world to support them. We have design engineers designing satellites, designing equipment that goes on the satellites. all with the goal to keep the pilots and the crew and the passengers connected, for whether that's operational reasons, as you point out, or whether someone in the cabin wants to stream Netflix or get on their Facebook. So that's what I do. It's a lot of fun.
Not to mention video conference calls and that type of thing. And as someone new in it, and you're flying the CRJs, et cetera, have you had some experiences with the technology yet?
As far as interface with like the flight management system and
Exactly.
absolutely, that's a key part in how we fly now. I don't know how it was before, but the FMS is integral into everything that we fly now. It gives us our performance information. It helps with our GPS tracking. It helps with pretty much, we can communicate with dispatch in the company as well as ATC if the radios go out or whatever might happen. It's always there as an option for us that really expands our abilities in the flight deck, which I really appreciate.
JJ, can you expand on that? I'm sure you've had a lot of experience in that world.
Well, I've heard it said, and James, you can confirm or deny this, but I've heard it said that the reason why we're getting technology in the cockpit finally is that the demand in the passenger cabin was so great that we're kind of piggybacking on that demand. Do you find that to be the case?
I think so. I mean, it seems to me that the people, at least in business aviation, who are able to buy business jets or use them for their companies are requesting and getting the same kind of experience in the cabin when they're traveling up at 45,000 feet at Mach 8 or 0.8 or 0.9 that they have in their office or their home office. And because we're putting that capability in business jets and in the airlines, hey, pilots are able to take advantage of that with updates coming to your EFBs, your electronic flight bags are getting updated in real time, and getting data off of, if there's anomalous data, let's say an APU is giving out auxiliary power unit is giving off a warning indicator, we can get that to the ground right away so that the next stop, somebody in Jim's team can begin repairing it.
Go ahead. Do you see the prices coming down? I've been privy to a few of the bills when we've traveled abroad. Most noticeably one to Siberia, where the boss's 8-year-old son was gaming all the way over on an 11-hour flight, and that's got to take a lot of bandwidth. But I've seen bills $50,000, $80,000, $100,000 for internet for a month for business jets. Is that going to come down?
Oh, you're absolutely right, JJ. They've already come down, fortunately. And my similar story is someone let their grandson on the business jet or the family aircraft, and they flew across the Atlantic and streamed a movie on an older per megabyte technology. And that film cost $10,000 to watch on that flight. Today, a typical bill might be as low as $5,000 per month flat rate. So yeah, it's come down dramatically since then, and it's heading down as well.
Good.
Wow. Well, this makes a good segue to talk a little bit about Jim's background, Jim Suela. Jim started his career in 1973. Again, he fits in that category with us, particularly JJ and myself. And Jim and I also have a distant connection in the sense that he worked in Springfield, Illinois, and that's where I'm originally from before moving to St. Louis and growing up there and learning to fly at Lambert. Jim, in pursuing his career, he started with learning aircraft maintenance at Hawkeye Community College in Waterloo, Iowa. After he completed that and got his certificate, early in his career, he took a position at Capital Aviation in Springfield, Illinois, formerly known as Garrett Aviation and is now known as Standard Aero. Jim furthered his education with a BA in business management from the University of Illinois, where he made the Dean's List. He has 47 years of experience in corporate aircraft maintenance and modifications. His areas of expertise are sales, marketing, design, contract estimating, project management, and administration. Prior to joining Westar Aviation in 2002 as co-founder and executive vice president of sales and marketing, Jim was with Garrett Aviation again in Springfield, where he held a number of different positions, including Director of Sales upon his departure. Jim led the sales effort on corporate aircraft maintenance and modifications, combined with the Dassault Falcon 20 and the 50 in terms of engine retrofit programs. He's also the president of Premier Aircraft LLC, a division of Westar Aviation, which is the Honeywell Aerospace upgrade program for the Falcon 50. Jim, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
And we'd also like to tell you a little bit again about the young aviation professional, Brandon, who's already been engaged with some questions. Brandon is also a graduate of Embry-Riddle, graduated in June, and he is working towards his master's now while waiting for a job opportunity. Brandon finished his multi-engine training in a Diamond DA-42, fun aircraft to fly, just before the pandemic kicked in. Brandon also was working on his certified flight instructor, his CFI, at Epic Flight Academy in Smyrna Beach, Florida, and completed his training in a CRJ 200 simulator. So welcome again, Brandon.
Thanks, Vince. Appreciate y'all having me.
I got to ask you about the simulator. Was that pretty cool, the CRJ 200 simulator?
It was really neat. It had very authentic, just like they're a real cockpit. It moves and everything. It feels like you're really in the plane when I'm swaying left and right. And it was exciting. Definitely different from I thought there was a lot of buttons and switches and levers in the Cessna. And once you go to the CRJ 200, you find out that it gets more complicated.
Just a bit.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Jim, I have an affinity for maintenance. I think, as most pilots should, that maintenance is key, you know. And when I heard recently from a 100-year-old Tuskegee Airman talk about it wasn't so much his flying, but the guy that took care of his airplane that really counted for him, that spoke a lot to me. But again, I just think maintenance is supreme. I think it's an absolute necessary. I've done my fair share of cross-country flights, and I definitely counted on the head of maintenance for that aircraft to ensure me that she was gonna fly well. Can you tell us a little bit about what Westar does and all of the different types of services that you guys offer, and as that relates to your career?
Well, yeah, certainly, would love to. I always appreciate the opportunity to just talk about Westar. We're very proud of our organization and all the people that work for us and all of our customers. And so we're a full service organization on corporate aircraft. You know, we do airframe maintenance, engine maintenance, custom interiors, paint, and avionics for virtually any type of business aircraft, from the Dassault Falcons to the Bombardier Globals and Challengers, the Embraer product line, Gulfstreams, the Cessna, Textron Cessnas and Beechcraft, Learjets, and all the turboprops. And to kind of mirror, you know, what was brought up earlier in the conversation about, you know, the technology. So, you know, today's aircraft are getting very sophisticated to the point where a technician on the ground can actually log into the aircraft during flight and do some troubleshooting that the pilots may be referencing. So it's a very sophisticated business anymore, and you know, it's very exciting. And so you know, we're having trouble, and we're going to continue to have trouble finding aircraft mechanics. You know, one of the things is there's fewer people that are going into the military, and that means there's fewer people coming out, and that's where we got a lot of our technicians was, you know, out of the military. And and anymore in today's world, it doesn't seem like, you know, people, you know, students getting out of high school, they don't want to be a mechanic. They want to sit behind a computer. But in today's world of corporate aviation, You know, more times than not, they're walking out to the aircraft with their laptop and they're plugging into the aircraft with the computer to do the troubleshooting. So I think it's a lot more interesting field to get into in today's world, simply because it is all about electronics. And so I think, you know, any student that's trying to decide what to do, they ought to think about getting into the world of aircraft and becoming an aircraft technician.
That's a great point. That's something that's commonly overlooked. I just think a lot of people aren't familiar, both in the industry and outside of the industry, with that. So I'll defer to James for a minute. James, how about you guys with regard to workforce and getting the next generation involved in your side of things?
No, I was thinking when Jim was talking, man, that's exactly what's going on. So it's just, I think that a lot of people aren't aware of the opportunities in aviation, and even particular, as I think I mentioned, in business aviation. We think we understand the airlines because most people have flown on an airline, but they're not as familiar with the smaller aircraft that are used for business purposes. And it's a big need as well. So when we get people from the industry, one, to help us from the outside, we'll have chief pilots, you know, we'll have someone like JJ come in as part of our customer advisory board and guide us on what's needed in the cockpit and what's needed in the aircraft. And then companies like Jim's, Westar, they're on our dealer advisory board, and those are our partners because we don't install any of this sophisticated equipment. We just design it and build it, but we need MROs to do the installation. So it's a very tightly integrated industry, and we'll get people who have been directors of maintenance for a flight department come in and work with us at our network operations center. So our 24/7 support organization. So if someone calls in with a problem with their business jet connectivity anywhere in the world, we have someone who's been there and knows what the problems might be and begin that troubleshooting remotely.
Yeah, very well, points taken. JJ, from a perspective of, since you've been on both sides, you've dealt with the airlines and you've worked with corporate, you're working corporate. So for our young professionals and people that are watching that are trying to figure out what aspect or what avenue they want to go, this speaking in your case with regard to pilots, what kind of thought process do you recommend for them? Because most of them talk about and think about the airlines, and it's the corporate aviation or business aviation world is something that generally is foreign even to these young aviation professionals that are currently in an aviation program or just finished studying one.
Well, James and Jim really hit the nail on the head with the technology advances, and I got to tell you, I'm coming up on a big birthday here this year, but I'm still fairly proficient on computers. But my 20-something-year-old colleagues that are starting out are a heck of a lot better. Case in point, the last that wasn't the last type rating I got, but less than 2 years ago, I got a Falcon 7X type rating. And I think the 7X is arguably one of the more sophisticated airplanes being produced right now, 7X and 8X. And my partner in the simulator was a 26-year-old kid that English was his second language. And my heart sunk when I was paired with him because I thought we're going to have difficulty during the training. It was a 1-month-long course. And I tell you what, that kid flew circles around me because the 7X is such a computer-dependent airplane that as far as the programming, I was taking lessons from him by the time it was over. And we both sailed through our check rides. But lesson to me was the younger generation really has an up since they're a lot more familiar with this technology. And old guys like us are struggling to keep up.
So Brooke, Brandon, Anna, let me ask the three of you, what were your thoughts as you were going through your aviation programs at Embry-Riddle about what your career path was going to be? Was it completely focused just on the airlines, or were you considering other options, or how were you guys thinking?
Well, speaking for myself, I was overwhelmed with the amount of possibility, honestly, the amount of people that reach out to you through the university, people who come to the university for career fairs and things like that, you realize just how large aviation is. Well, I'm sure most of us came to Embry-Riddle just thinking, I want to be an airline pilot. This is the best school in Florida. This is where I want to be. And you slowly start to see, wow, business aviation is massive. There's a lot more to the airlines than you would consider. And I went from being, I'm going to be an airline pilot, I'm going to go fly for Delta, to, oh, wow, maybe cargo would be something really interesting, to then joining the NBAA and being like, oh, wow, there's a lot more opportunities here too, and sales, and you can be a demo pilot, you can do this. There's just a world of opportunities in aviation, and Embry-Riddle is really what opened my eyes to all those opportunities. Anna,
Brandon?
I would say that I was mostly focused on the airlines. Obviously, I do like the airlines. That was pretty much always what my main path was going to be. But there definitely were other opportunities presented, especially at Embry-Riddle. I took a unmanned aircraft systems course, which was very interesting to me. I was considering going into the maintenance program as a possibility, because I had some friends who dual majored and they love doing the work on the airplane that they fly as well, which was very cool. But I found that for me, the airline track seemed to be the best fit for me at the time. Having gone from the all uphill in the industry to this now lull in the hiring and upswing of things, I think I'm expanding my horizons a little bit more than I was when there was a clear set path and a very, very regimented way to get to where I wanted to be. I think, like Brooke said, cargo is now very much more of an option, especially with the way that people are ordering more things online and the industry is changing in that aspect. I feel like mainline airlines isn't necessarily the only option. There's a lot bigger world out there. I need to start looking at that a little bit more.
Sure. Brandon?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I came in with a airline focus, solely airline focus, but thanks to the Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation and Citation Jet Pilots, they've pulled the curtain back on all aviation can be. And I guess the neatest thing that I've seen done so far is last year I was working for a company called Air Unlimited out of Sanford with a CJP member, Chick Gregg and Mark Neubauer. And they would actually use their citations to do medevacs, which is they would fly to different cities all over the country, pick up organs or pick up doctors and transport them across the country to save people's lives with the organs and the doctors to work on them. And I never imagined something so humanitarian being used in the business jet world, and it blew my mind. So I'd like to have that be part of my flying as well.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know about the humanitarian efforts of aviation overall, even that's happening right now during COVID-19, but just in general. And I'm sure JJ could speak of it, but in corporate aviation, that's one of the big things that business aviation does, is provide their aircraft for like the corporate angel network and angel flight and other type of things. And then everybody in one way or another provides their aircraft for different angel flight missions. And as you said, moving organs. There are even organizations that move pets, you know, because of, for example, I say move pets, like if there's a kennel that's overflowing, rather than euthanizing the animals at that kennel, they'll put them on a plane and take them to somewhere that's needed, that people are going to adopt them and that type of thing. So there are a lot of humanitarian things that I'm glad you brought that up, because that's really a great part of it. So,
you know, down in Australia, there's an organization called the Royal Flying Doctor. Some of us are familiar with them. They fly PC-12s all around that big country with very few people to get medical help to people where they need it, because a lot of them are not near doctors or dentists.
Wow. JJ, you want to chime in on that? Anything regarding humanitarian side?
Well, I've seen a little bit. I have not participated in it myself, other than with the airlines. We often had a styrofoam cooler in the cockpit with a heart or eyeballs most recently. That's how some of those things get moved around. But that will always be there. That of all the things that have dropped off in the last 6 months, I've not seen any decrease in that type of flying.
You're absolutely right about that. Even flight departments that have slowed down or aren't doing much flying, they will provide their aircraft for humanitarian needs. So while we're talking on the medical side of things too, I don't know how many of you are familiar with MedAir, but that's a really great program. It's primarily, it's both with commercial and corporate, but the whole premise of it, which was started by a flight nurse who has been on the board of NBAA, et cetera. But MedAir is an organization that if you have an in-flight emergency, they actually go live with the pilot or the flight attendant to figure out what's going on with you, determine whether the plane needs to divert and land somewhere soon or can make it to its destination, and then have an ambulance on the other end, plus a doctor at the hospital to address the medical need, whether it's a super serious one or just one important enough to need some medical attention. And that's a worldwide organization that does that. And I think that's a really great service too. So Jim, JJ, James, as we kind of start to wrap things up here, and you know, you guys brought up one of the big challenges, which is getting the next generation into aviation. With the three that we have here today, the three young aviation professionals, what kind of advice what kind of advice would you give them in general, just about their career and you know, from your perspective and what your organizations do?
Well, airplanes are not going to go away. There isn't anything that's going to reduce the demand for travel on a permanent basis. I know Boeing is already designing recirculating air systems that are completely different than the ones they have now, for the purpose of lessening the spread of the virus. So airplanes aren't going to go away, number one. Number two, if you have a desire to be in aviation, you're not going to be happy unless you are in aviation. So those two things combined, you got to stick with it.
Jim, James?
There are some ups and downs for sure, but yeah, if you're passionate about this, I mean, we're working with companies who are bringing supersonic jets to business aviation. It's coming back. Flat panel, electronically steered antennas, new high capacity satellites, in addition to all the jobs of flying the aircraft and maintaining them. There's so many opportunities in aviation.
Jim?
I think, you know, from what I've heard from these three young individuals on the panel here, it sounds like they're definitely going the right direction. You know, my advice is that for younger people getting into the aviation industry, to definitely diversify your knowledge base, you know, throughout the aviation business. And I'm just going to give you a quick story here. My daughter she's going into her sophomore year at the University of Minnesota, and she's thinking about getting into aviation law. And so she's looking for advice from me. And my advice to her, you know, along with all young people, is, you know, especially in her case, is if you're going to get into aviation law, I think that you'd be well versed to become a pilot. And it gives you, you know, a better understanding, so that if that's going to be your study is aviation law, that you better understand the entire industry by becoming a pilot or an aircraft mechanic. And I think as far as, you know, her direction, she'd be better versed to become a pilot. So I think that from what I've heard here, you know, and just the brief time that I've seen these young individuals, that they're definitely headed in the right direction, and make sure that, you know, you study and become more diverse, you know, in the industry. And it's going to be whatever career you pick or whatever direction you go, to acquire as much knowledge as you can about that industry.
Thank you, Jim. You mentioned aviation law. Actually, on an upcoming show, we're going to have some aviation lawyers to talk about the opportunities in it. So I'll take advantage of that and plug that real quick. Well, I appreciate having you guys on board. I'd like to let the young aviation professionals make some closing comments if you guys have anything you'd like to say.
Yes. Actually, I could kind of have a question here. Just looking for some support from Jim, actually. I was talking to him yesterday. He said that he started Westar in 2002, maybe when everything was in a low.
Exactly, yeah.
So, and then you said at the moment, it kind of seemed like a bad time to try and do that. But looking back, now maybe it was an awesome opportunity while things were at a low. And would you say right now things are slowing down a little bit in aviation? So this might actually be a great time to jump into aviation right now.
It probably is, yeah. And one thing right now with our business, when this was COVID hit, in March, we were real nervous about the future of our business because we knew that this was going to affect flying. However, right now we've never been busier. All of our customers, they see what's going on and they're taking advantage of this slow time, put their aircraft down and, get any required maintenance caught up. So, we've been real fortunate that we've been considered an essential business. We've been able to stay open and our customers are taking advantage of this time in order to get caught up on maintenance. So, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the future holds, but I think I agree with a comment that JJ made earlier about, aircraft are not going to go away. And I think that this is going to help corporate aircraft because anybody that has been riding the airline in the past who can afford a corporate aircraft is probably going to go out and buy one now. So I think that it's going to be good for our business.
Yeah, and my thoughts were for the young students that are trying to maybe get into private right now. If Brooke and I are kind of slowed down, not becoming instructors or moving to the airlines right now, for someone that's 2 or 3 years behind, they thought, now if they get all their certificates and ratings while we're kind of at a still, they're going to catch up to all of us and be at the same spot we're at now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's a great time to jump in and start flying, I think.
Absolutely. Anna or Brooke, you guys have any closing comments?
Yeah, absolutely. I realize that things in aviation are different right now, but it's been great to chat with these 3 aviation professionals and just to get more of an inside idea, because we can only speculate so much as to where aviation is going. But we've always seen with the trends in the past, whenever we have some sort of setback in aviation, it just prepares us for a major comeback. And, to students who do want to start out now, especially young women in aviation, I 100% support it. Like Brandon said, they are going to catch up with us. So they're putting themselves in a great position. Airlines, may look different in a few years, but the way that we've set ourselves up as a society, aviation isn't going away. It's only going to continue to expand. And even business aviation, is something that definitely students should be looking into and considering, because there's a lot of change coming, but there's room for everybody to continue growing.
Great. Thank you, Brooke. Anna?
I really appreciate being included on this panel today. It's so nice to hear from experienced professionals and young aviators like myself who are trying to find the right path for ourselves out there. And I really appreciate the diversity in what we can find in aviation. I always found it very fascinating to try and see all different sides of the operation, especially when I first started out in whatever I was doing, when I was working at the flight line at Riddle or when I was interning with United. I like to tour around and try and shadow as many different roles as possible. And it's very cool to see that the many different roles in aviation come together to create the industry that we know and love. So I really appreciate all of your feedback and mentorship through all of our growth and learning, especially as young professionals, because there's been plenty of people who may not be as positive and passionate about the industry, who may be disgruntled, but you can always find those who have the right things to say. And I really appreciate you guys being there for us. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to be on the program, particularly for our seasoned professionals providing your insight and background related to the industry to share with these young aviation professionals and give them some thought and ideas on what they can do for their future. I also want to echo what JJ and Jim have said, and James, that the industry, it's a resounding industry. It's an industry that, excuse me, that never goes away. So I think this industry has been through a lot. We're old enough to know, and go through it and have gone through it, I should say, and see some of the things that have transitioned with some of the challenges to the industry, but it's very resilient. It always comes back, and usually comes back twice as strong, with just as many opportunities. And I will say this, I know that prior to COVID-19, there was a lot of talk about a shortage coming with pilots and mechanics. Jim just touched on it with mechanics. That's still very true. There's still going to be a super strong need for all aspects of the industry, technicians, pilots, et cetera. Not to mention all of the other elements of the industry. So it's not going anywhere. If anything, it's going to be growing and expanding. James mentioned the SST technology, and we didn't even touch on the unmanned vehicles, the UAVs that are now prevalent. So they're just, you name it, it's there. And that, you know, another piloting opportunity is to actually be a pilot for those UAVs and that type of thing. So a lot going on and a lot of opportunities. And again, I really appreciate having everybody on board for this call, and wish everybody well.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we'll call that a wrap, and we'll catch up with you guys next week with another program of similar nature with some new guests. You guys have a good one. Take care.
All right. Okay.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.